Well, good morning, conference. It looks like I've been given the hospital pass of following Tim Farron. It's great to see so many of you here this weekend, and I hope you're going to have a fantastic time at our spring conference here in Harrogate. Now, since I had the last opportunity to speak to you, you might have noticed things have changed a little bit. I've got 57 brilliant new colleagues, and I have had the honour of taking on the role of the party's spokesperson for health and social care. And I also have the absolute pleasure of working with a talented team of new MPs to campaign on the health issues that matter most. I've got Danny Chambers on mental health, Jess Brown-Fuller on hospitals and primary care, and Alison Bennett on social care. Now, those of you who made the long winter trip to North Shropshire back in December 2021 will know that the crisis across the country in the NHS and social care hit my area harder than most. At every Canvas session we went to, we found someone whose friend or relative had had an awful experience waiting for an ambulance. And at some of those sessions, we talked to people who had tragically lost their loved ones. Lost them waiting for the life-saving service that they have always been able to rely on, and the life-saving service that they should still be able to rely on. And that is an experience I will never forget. And it's an experience that has been central to my work as North Shropshire's MP, and it's an experience that is central to my work now as our spokesperson. Waiting far too long for an ambulance in a life or death situation is the end result of an NHS which needs fixing both at the front and at the back door. It's not because those ambulance crews haven't worked hard or don't care. Believe me, they do. I had the privilege of joining 2 paramedics for a 12-hour shift in the autumn of 2022. They were amazing. They were knowledgeable, they were professional, they were incredibly hardworking, and most of all, they were caring. But when they get their patient to hospital, they are faced with a very old problem that we all recognise. There's no room at the inn. And for them, there's no option other than to sit and to wait with their patient until there is. So, they sit and they wait, knowing that there are other people out there who need their expert help and their expert care. People that they can't get to. People like an 81-year-old lady called Sylvia, who fell in the street in Oswestry just 3 weeks ago, and she'd had a suspected stroke. Now, as we all know, with a stroke, time is critical. A passerby stopped to wait with her, while her breathing became shallower, her speech more slurred, and she got colder and colder. And he, the hero of the hour, waited with her for an hour and 20 minutes before the ambulance got there. Now, the target for someone with a suspected stroke, a Category 2 incident, is 18 minutes. But Sylvia waited for more than 4 times that. And it's far from the worst example I've dealt with. So we need to ask ourselves, how have we got here? How have we ended up with expert paramedics waiting outside hospitals and in corridors when there are people in the community who need their help? And as we all know, the situation inside the hospital is just as bad. Patients can't be admitted because the hospital is full. And so the desperate staff in A&E treat them as best as they can, in corridors, in cupboards, and for those fit to sit, on plastic chairs. And this can go on for hours and hours, or even days. Patients such as my constituent Emma, who, having been diagnosed with sepsis, spent 48 hours in a fit-to-sit area and then 12 hours on a trolley in an X-ray corridor before finally being admitted, alongside a horrifying delay in the medication required to deal with a life-threatening condition. Now, I'm glad to say Emma is recovering. But these horrifying stories are the symptoms of what we have described in recent years as winter pressure, or occasionally winter crisis, with hospitals full due to spikes in winter diseases that happen every year, such as flu, COVID, and norovirus. And far from being an unexpected bolt from the blue, this winter crisis has become an annual event, and the knock-on community effect is devastating. Over the last couple of years, there's been widespread reporting from nurses that they are delivering care in overcrowded and unsuitable places, such as corridors, converted cupboards, and even car parks, and that's happening on a daily basis. Patients are forced to routinely receive care in unsuitable conditions without dignity or privacy and compromising patient safety. And it's fast becoming the new normal all year round. This year, several job postings for corridor care nurses were advertised across the country as hospitals desperately sought to cope with appalling overcrowding in A&E. Patients should not be expected to accept this. Now, almost every year, the government has ended up announcing hundreds of millions of pounds of emergency funding to help the NHS through yet another winter crisis, around halfway through the winter. So what if, instead of just reacting, of normalising corridor care and spending money far too late in the process, we invested now, invested properly to ensure that the NHS is prepared for the next winter? The government has the opportunity and the responsibility to end corridor care, end it forever, to ensure patients never have to face such indignity again. And this has to happen by the end of this Parliament at the latest. That's why we've called for a winter task force, which would begin right now, to work throughout the year to prevent the annual winter crisis. A £1.5 billion ring-fenced fund to ensure that hospitals can prepare for the surge in patients before it happens, accessing extra beds and extra staff without resorting to corridors and cupboards. The NHS can plan now to spend that money effectively. I might have mentioned that I'm an accountant, and as an accountant, I know that getting hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds in January, probably in the midst of a critical incident, is of no use to hospital managers. They won't be able to spend that money well, or even at all, with only a few weeks of winter left to go. They need time to plan the best way to make sure that that money is spent to deliver safe and timely patient care. So while Wes Streeting is busy reorganising the NHS from the top down, Jess and I are asking him to focus on the patients who will need that winter plan in place. So if they have a stroke, they aren't left for an hour and 20 minutes on a cold pavement, so that another person like Emma with suspected sepsis is treated with the urgency that their life-threatening condition demands, not left to suffer in a corridor for hours. Now, of course, we've been talking about the immediate problem in hospitals, but it's widely acknowledged that to tackle the NHS crisis properly, action is needed in the community too. Action to get people to a GP when they need one, to keep their community pharmacy open, and end the horror that is DIY dentistry, people pulling out their own teeth to escape the agony that they're in. And we need action to deal with the mental health crisis that is gripping the country, gripping every generation, but especially gripping our young people. They deserve better. Far too many young people are stuck on a CAMHS waiting list, their situation worsening, their life chances diminishing. Young people who would thrive with the right early help. Only the Liberal Democrats have committed to tackling this problem. Norman Lamb was the first MP to campaign for mental health to be seen as important as physical health. and Liberal Democrats have put mental health as a priority at every general election and in our manifesto since. Now, my brilliant colleague, Munira Wilson, has been campaigning for a mental health professional in every school for years, and she won't stop until she's achieved her goal. And my other brilliant colleagues, Vera Hobhouse and Baroness Parminter, have led the campaign for people with eating disorders, the mental health condition which tragically has the highest suicide rate of all. They will continue the fight for recognition and priority for this awful illness. And the Labour government has made all the right noises on mental health. But just weeks ago, the government shamefully axed mental health targets, putting at risk progress on dealing with a disease that for many can be turned around with the right intervention, and putting at risk the huge progress made in recognising mental health as critical to well-being as physical health, and putting at risk the lives of people who unnecessarily reach a crisis point and for whom there may be no ambulance when they need one. That's why Danny and I are calling on Wes Streeting to put those targets back. And last, but perhaps most importantly, we are calling on Wes Streeting to fix the crisis in social care. Now, we all know that hospitals struggle at dangerous levels of occupancy because so many people can't be discharged back into their home or a care home. The care they need just isn't available for them. There are huge vacancy rates in social care. We need to find a small city full of carers by 2030 to ensure that everyone can live with the dignity they deserve and as independently as possible. And we can't do that without valuing our carers, paid and unpaid, for the vital and the skilled work that they do. So Alison and I were delighted when Wes Streeting contacted us over Christmas to invite us to cross-party talks on social care. This was a huge Lib Dem win, a key ask in our manifesto and a chance to put into practice the Care Act that the Lib Dems passed in government all those years ago. A chance to find support for the unpaid carers, the people who want to provide care but can't because of the practicalities of paying their own bills and looking after the rest of their family. A chance to free councils of the unreasonable burden of paying for social care from council tax. And the chance to free everyone of the worry that one day they might need to spend all their hard-earned savings on care. But it wasn't all good news. The Casey Commission won't report back on its findings until 2028, 3 years' time and just before a general election. The risks of social care plans becoming a political football once again are far too high, and 2028 is too late for a care sector on its knees. And we were angered beyond words when those cross-party talks were abandoned at the last minute because of diary clashes. Now, which politician can't be bothered to clear their diary for a once-in-a-generation chance to fix the problem of social care? Not one that's fit for office, that's for sure. The truth is that it is Liberal Democrats providing the only real opposition to this Labour government when it comes to the NHS and care. Goodness knows, the Tories don't have a leg to stand on after leaving the NHS in a state of crisis because of their disastrous mismanagement. Alison, Jess, Danny and myself will be taking on Labour and providing the constructive opposition this country so desperately needs. Supporting the Labour government when they get things right and challenging them when they don't. Challenging them on the cruel axing of mental health targets. Challenging them to fix social care now, not in 3 years' time, and challenging them to bring the horrific reality of corridor care to an end once and for all during this Parliament. Because conference, I never want to hear about someone who died waiting for an ambulance ever again. Thank you.